Hello, my name is Colin Payton, and I am the director of the Writing Center. I want to talk to you a little bit today about brainstorming, but I'm going to put you through a process that several of my Writing Center consultants came up with. I had not seen people do before, and I actually found extremely useful for myself, and I've used it several times in classrooms in Foundations 2 and up to jumpstart a lot of the big research paper or research project process. So here we go. We're going to brainstorm with research today. I've got a couple goals for this session, and I think we'll get there by the end of it. First, I really want you to learn about the research cycle and understand that it's messy, and the mess is part of it, and it takes time to work through. Second, I do want you to refine your topic from the beginning to the end. And then I also want you to find one really, really good source. This source will open up other sources within the same academic conversation. And I promise you, if you find that one source, you will be able to finish your research project, whether it's the annotated bib or the literature review. Next, I really want you to be able to take away from this that you may not use every single tool I talk about, but there are several powerful tools to help you develop your ideas that you may not have used before and could be used strategically at different parts of the writing process. Okay, let's jump into it. Big picture thing that I want you to take away is just, what is the research cycle? It's not going to be doing a whole bunch of work ahead of time, and then once you've got all of your ideas in a row, writing it all out. It's actually quite a bit messier than that. It's going to start with your opinion or to opine. You're going to have to listen for a little while, question what you know, and then get back into it multiple times over. And each one of these steps looks a little bit differently the number of times that you do it. There are different strategies for each pass through this cycle. So let's start with perhaps where you're actually going to end up. You're going to start with your initial opinion, which may be uninformed, and then by the end, you're going to state your opinion in a thesis of some sort. It's the final product is your opinion. So there are a couple of ways that you could go about watching this video. The first one is you could just watch it straight through and gather the information and do this stuff on your own. But what I do when I deliver this in person in class is actually pause everything and have us together as a class go through these steps. Sometimes it takes a couple class sessions, and you'll see why. The first one, though, is I want you to write for 15 minutes on the topic that you've chosen without stopping. No rules such as fixing grammar mistakes or even thinking about it and trying to word craft things. Just get your ideas on the page. This is called stream of consciousness writing, and in a way, it's a method of tricking yourself into spending some time on your topic. Write in order to learn what you actually know about your ideas through this process. All right, so that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to pause the video, write for 15 minutes. Okay, on the other side of writing your opinion for 15 minutes, the next step is listening. And when it comes to academic work, listening usually means doing research, listening to what other people have to say about your idea that are smarter than you and have been studying this for a long time. So listen to the research. You'll understand this if you're at the very beginning stages that you need to skim titles and abstracts, such as going to Dunn Library and just seeing if the titles of things match with the search terms you put in. The goal for this is to find one good article and not settle for it. I'm going to stress find one. Don't just collect a whole bunch of things from Dunn Library and put it into a big Word document or something like that. That is a messy way of doing research. None of those articles are within the same conversation. And I'll talk a little bit more about that here in a moment. So what I want you to do is go to Dunn Library. Two things that will help you be more efficient at your researching for this step. First, when you put in a search term, click the full text button. This means that whatever you get back is going to be a text that Dun Library has access to, meaning if you click on it, you'll actually be able to read it right now. You won't have to request it from Interlibrary Loan. You won't even have to go to the library itself to pick up a book. So that is very useful. You get to have your information right now. The second one is click the peer-reviewed button. This means that you're joining an academic conversation that is certified by people in that field to be good. A lot of people have said, yes, this conforms to the standards of our discipline, and we approve of this contribution to our discipline. Those two things will mean that you're going to have a text that is available to you, as well as one that is a credible source. So go and do that. Pause, find one good article. What I want you to do for this, don't waste your time and read the entire thing right now, but read the abstract, the introduction, and the conclusion, and then see me on the other side. Okay, so you've got your stream of consciousness out, you've started your research to find one good article. That's what you should have. The next step is always to reflect on things, and this is questioning what you know, what the field knows, and all that kind of stuff. So once again, what we're going to do is pause and actually answer these questions. First off, what are the main lines of the debate? That article that you just read, the abstract, what is it that other people have said? What are the sides of it? And where does the article situate itself on the topic? How have the term been defined? What hasn't been explored? That'll be in the conclusion. At the very end, what are their future research goals, or what they say people should be looking at, or they didn't have a chance to look at? And then finally, what didn't you know before that you know now after having read the article? So of course, what I want you to do is pause and take a minute to just reflect on these questions. Okay, what I see most of the time when I look at a lot of undergraduate work is people who started with a general interest, they went and wrote on it for a little bit, they did a little bit of light reading on it, they questioned some things, and that is usually where they stop when it comes to research and pushing forward a big project. The reason that this is a research cycle is that as you get higher and higher up in your research disciplines, it takes much more time and effort outside in this mess to really get to stuff. So you start with the general interest, do some light reading, question what is known, but then you have to put yourself back into it. You have to narrow your interest from where you started. You have to deepen your reading in that conversation, and you have to find the gap in the knowledge. What I mean by that is you're going to be learning through this whole process. The academic work is not necessarily about you just learning new things. The goal of academic work is to find the limit of the knowledge in the field, not the limit of your knowledge. Further, how you know when you're done and you've done good work, make that knowledge useful to your audience, not simply new. We could create new knowledge here on the spot that nobody would care about. For instance, nobody has studied the number of people that have viewed this, how to do a brainstorming with research video. We could do a study on that and come up with new results, but nobody would care because this isn't really part of a conversation. Now, maybe I could make it part of a conversation and say, the Writing Center's, budget funding is determined based on how many presentations it gives to people and how many people view those presentations. Now that is useful because it connects to a context. So don't just settle for learning something new for the first time. And even if you discover something new, make sure that it is useful to somebody else. So let's jump back in. We are into our second round of the research cycle, and we need to get back to your opinion and thinking about what you know. Now you can successfully say that you've fulfilled Harlan Ellison's quote that you're not entitled to your opinion, you're entitled to your informed opinion. No one is entitled to be ignorant. So you get to have fun and start digging deeper and deeper. I think that at this stage, once you've got a lot of different stuff and you started to figure out that, okay, there are a lot of articles out there that you could follow, create a mind map. This is a very useful way for me to organize my thoughts. Here's an example of an article that I was writing on ignorance and happiness. Ignorance is bliss, kind of that concept, and looking at what different philosophers and thinkers have thought all the way from Plato up to Aesop Rock. By the way, if you haven't listened to Aesop Rock, I think he's the James Joyce of our generation, the most eloquent, hip-hop artist to have ever lived. Whatever, that's me. With a mind map, you start with a couple big ideas, and then you start creating parallel ideas to compare and contrast things that you know. So here, each one of my points, I'm looking at the definition of ignorance, how they defined enlightenment, and their claim for happiness. And when I compare them across these 4 different thinkers, well, great. I've got a very balanced argument that's quite robust on all sides. And I can tell where I've got certain ideas that are deeper and certain ideas that are more shallow, and I can go and do research on that stuff. A mind map is really just a breakdown of these couple things. You're going to start with a main topic, whatever that main topic is that you have. Then you're going to break it down into maybe 4 main body topics. The point of mind mapping is not to create that linear narrative that you see in outlines that makes you start with one thing and move to others. The goal is to see it kind of from a mile-high version of it, so you can swap things around and see just how the territory is shaping up. Once you have those big topics, you start breaking out the different points in it. What I often find is at this stage, I realize that my point or my topic is way too big for me to be able to handle in the number of pages and the amount of time I have left. And actually, that the one area that I found, I might only start with one of those topics and write my entire paper on that and ignore the other 3. So, of course, what I want you to do is pause and create. Take some time, maybe 5 or 10 minutes, and start mind mapping out what you know about your topic. Once you're done and satisfied, unpause and join us. All right. The next stage of listening is to interrogate one of your articles. This may be something that is the most useful to you out of all the things that we've talked about so far. It tends to blow the minds of all the freshmen I work with, and there are even seniors and graduate students who I've worked with at other institutions who do not know about these tools. So I told you that this one article that you chose is really important. I'm going to show you why. You have to first start with what is an academic conversation. There's a metaphor that this guy, Kenneth Burke, who's a rhetorician, you don't need to know who he is really, he came up with that I think really summarizes the academic conversation well. He called it a parlor, and so we call it the Burkean parlor. Basically, the story goes like this. You walk into a parlor, a room, and you see a whole bunch of people having conversations. They've been there before you, you're new on the scene, you have no clue what interests you, and no clue what other people are talking about. So you mosey around the room. You listen to some conversations and they bore you. You listen to others and maybe the conversationalists are shouting at each other or whispering, and that's not your vibe as well. You finally find one group of people who's talking about something that interests you, but you still recognize that they're talking above your head. So you sit and listen for a little while. You get the general tenor of the conversation, the main lines of the debate, the back and forth, who's citing whom, and what's come before, and where they're trying to push the conversation now. But after a while of listening, you realize something. They've missed something. They're all very smart people, but they don't know something that you know. So you muster up your courage, you wait for a pause in the conversation, and you join the conversational flow. You make your point, make your argument, you say what other people have said before, you appease those who might be angry, and you conclude. And what happens next shouldn't have surprised you, but it does. The very first person who talks disagrees with you. You knew it was going to happen. They're always disagreeing with each other, but it still hurts. So they say their piece, but before you even have a chance to defend yourself, something genuinely does surprise you. Somebody comes to your defense. They liked what you had to say. All of a sudden, you are now a part of the conversation. You have a chance to weigh in. Some people come to your side. Some people come and attack you. You learn a lot from that conversation, and now you're part of the field. The night grows on. Many people, new faces come, old faces go. You grow weary and tired of the conversation, but you've moved it further than it was when you first started. You grow tired and you leave, and you see that the room has completely changed. There are new people everywhere, that it's your time to pass on the conversation to somebody new. That is the academic conversation. And we can trust that metaphor to be a very predictable way of how peer-reviewed research articles work. So let me start with a sample article. Here's one from my field. I'm writing my dissertation on writing program administration at Iowa State, as well as higher education history. So my article is from 1992. I placed that article on a timeline. The past came before it. Obviously, a lot of things have happened after 1992. But you have to realize is that this one article is a gateway to a conversation. And it's the only thing you need in order to get into that conversation. You just have to know how to look. To get everything from the past that is relevant, you don't have to go to Dunn Library and find a whole bunch of different search terms and articles related to your search terms. You just have to look at the citations within that one article to see the relevant lines of the debate. So go to your footnotes, look to see where certain people are cited, go into the work cited and see if there are any article titles that seem to be relevant to your topic. You know that this article has already been certified by the field. The conversation narrowed it to this point. Everything in there is what you need to know for your own research project. So that's how you get up to the timeline of the article that you cited. Great, that was cutting edge at one time. But how do you bring it up to right now? Well, that is where Google Scholar comes in. And we're going to use the cited by feature to see how your article has been treated since it was first published. Just you can type in Google Scholar, and it'll bring up a little search bar that only returns academic articles as the results. So here I'm going to put in that article from 1992, and we see a couple important things. One, we see that the article, it's abstract, but we also see cited by. Cited by means since 1992, 101 other scholarly articles have cited this one. Now, some people who are metric hounds will look at the number of citations and say that is what makes a good article, and in many ways they're right. 101 other people have affirmed the conversation started in this article. But how we use it as researchers is we just click on that button. When I click on that button, I find a list of all the articles that were cited, meaning these new articles bring that one good article we found up to date. So that 1992 article, now look at the current conversation I have. I can look at these 4 articles, which are really up to date for my field, and now I've got a pretty decent linear annotated bibliography. I can look at the work cited in that earlier article to see what the big names were, and I carry it forward to the present moment, just with one article. So, what I want you to do, interrogate your one article and realize its potential. It has everything there that you need to be able to finish a research project, especially at the undergraduate level. What I want you to do is create a short list of sources based on the works cited and the Google Scholar cited by tool. Okay, pause. I'll be here when you're done. All right, this final step, which is not really the final step because it's again a research cycle, but it's where we're going to end, is questioning again. At this point, now that you've seen what the academic conversation is within your field and you know the main lines of the argument, you're probably feeling a little messy. It should feel a little overwhelming, a little confusing, and like, wow, there's way more to this topic than I ever knew when I first started out. That is exactly how it should be. The reality of this cycle is that it moves from where you started at a very broad topic, and each time you pass through, you realize that there's more and more written about it, and it narrows and narrows in its focus to what you care about, until you should get to that final article that says exactly where the limits of the field are. That is what you want to get to, and this process could go on for a long time. To do a really big project like what I did in my dissertation, it took me 4 or 5 years to start with what I thought was a really robust idea, but it took me going constantly back through this conversation to get to something that was really precise. So as you cycle through, you need to figure out good ways of questioning what you know so that you continue to narrow down even more. I recommend that you write out an argument of your draft. Again, this is the opinion, but what you'll find is as you're trying to explain these new cutting edge ideas to yourself and maybe to an imaginary conversationalist, you'll start to question what you know even more. Of course, I'm the Writing Center guy, so I have to plug it. Take that writing to the Writing Center, because at that point, we are trying to question you on a lot of your assumptions about your arguments. We're meant to investigate the logic as well as try to figure out how to make it stronger. But then maybe you don't have time for that. And maybe in the future you don't have a Writing Center wherever you're going. So there are other tools as well. Personally, something I use all the time, I get into arguments with ChatGPT, and this is only going to get better, and I might get in trouble for telling you about this, but I do think that is a powerful tool. ChatGPT is predictable in that it is an artificial intelligence chatbot. I want you to remember a couple things. Number one, it is not smart. It's smart in a weird way, but it doesn't know when it's actually right about things. It is modeling for you how people have arguments and make conversation, and it'll pull what appear to be facts, but I'm going to show you here in a moment that those facts are not credible really in any way, and you have to fact check every single thing that an AI bot does, but it's still useful. So I oftentimes use ChatGPT to help it define terms for me that I thought I knew well, like for instance, what is a seminar really and where did it come from? You can also have it draft out an argument that you aren't sure about to see how it sounds in somebody else's words and to see if you actually like it or not. And then you can also have it recount the common lines of argument about your topic. So AI, this chatbot, is trained on millions and millions and millions of documents, and it will regurgitate things that are common knowledge across different internet forums and whatnot. So as an example, I asked it a question from my dissertation. What differences are there between Western and Eastern land-grant colleges? Now, this is a bit of a leading question because there hasn't been a whole lot of work in my field to make those distinctions. I just wanted to see what it would say. And of course, like any good AI, it did, whether it should have or not. It gave me a 6-item list, and I disagreed with everything that it wrote. So I called it out on it. I wrote an argument in response to it. I had to muster up my own facts. I went and found some of my sources, and here's what it gave me. It said, I apologize for any inaccuracies in my previous response. Your points are valid and proved a more nuanced perspective. But here's the thing. even at that point, I can't trust it. AI is not proving whether I'm right or wrong. It is mirroring how people have conversations. I argued against it and made some good points, and it parroted how people respond when somebody has a really good argument in response to them. So I could keep going with this. I could tell it that it's wrong again for being wrong in the first place, and then we can continue the conversation. But what this process did for me is help me think through my ideas in ways that I didn't know. Remember, this chatbot gave me 6 arguments that I disagreed with. Thomas Edison and the light bulb, remember that story? I saw 6 wrong ways to make that argument, but it helped me refine the ways that I was thinking about it so that I could actually determine whether my initial argument was even good in the first place, and come up with maybe a shorter list of differences between Eastern and Western land-grant colleges. So when you get into the further stages of your debate and you really want to push your ideas forward, I encourage you to use like a chatbot like this for certain portions to help you think through things. It's not going to get upset. It's not going to shut down or use bad argumentation strategies against you. It'll engage. It'll write paragraphs back to you. So even when the ChatGPT is wrong, the process is still useful. All right, we've covered a lot of ground in a surprisingly short amount of time. I told you at the beginning I was going to help you learn about the research cycle. You're going to go through this a lot. If you're an honest academic, you cannot just write a 1 draft essay on something. This process is messy and it spirals and spirals and spirals until you truly know what you're talking about. I also hope that by the end of this, you refined your topic, took advantage of those pause breaks to think through your ideas more carefully. I also hope that you found one really good source, and I hope that you saw how important that one source can be to generating the entirety of your bibliography that you might use. Finally, I hope you saw a couple ideas. I don't expect that you'll take all of them. A lot of people really hate mind maps, but whatever. And a lot of people are scared of the artificial intelligence stuff. But know that there are many tools out there available to you to help you do your works, to do your research. As always, we're here at the Writing Center, not because you can't write, but because you do. If you want to talk through any of this, talk with me or one of our consultants, scan the QR code and schedule an appointment today. Thank you.